Hello everyone, welcome back to Mix Buzz TV, mixing and mastering tutorials on YouTube. Part 9 of our ultimate compression tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at a subject that I'm sure many of you were waiting for, and that is master bus compression. How to use a compressor on your 2-bus on the master fader to control the dynamic of the whole mix. But not only that, master bus compressor is used for tone. It's a lot like how you interpret the mix, okay? And because of that, we're also going to take a look at the different type of compressors that you can use on the 2-bus. So first of all, let me start saying that I am among those mixing engineers that like to put a master bus compressor as soon as I can. And usually that happens when I have my rough mix. And for rough mix, I mean just overall levels and pan, before putting any other compressor on any single element. I listen to the song a couple of times, or maybe 10, and usually the song from the beginning, from the start, dictates the vibe. And according to the vibe that I get, I choose my 2-bus compressor. And that's one of the very first thing that I do when I'm mixing. Because slapping a 2-bus compressor at the end, it just doesn't work for me, okay? Usually it changes the balance and the tone way too much, and I like to mix inside my 2-bus compressor from the beginning as soon as I can. Unfortunately, when it comes to compression in general and 2-bus compression in particular, the only rule is that there are no rules. So it would be impossible to list all the different possibilities that you can have on how to use a 2-bus compressor, but there are different approaches, different way of thinking of 2-bus compression. Let's narrow it down to 3. The first one is to use your 2-bus compressor as a gentle leveler. So what you want is to control the overall mix, especially if the macro dynamics of the mix are very different. For example, you have a song that has very quiet verses and very loud choruses or a bridge. In that case, you might want a gentle compressor with a slow attack and a slowish release, and with a soft knee with a low ratio, but you're gonna get a pretty transparent action from the compressor. Or the second approach is maybe you have a song that has a pretty steady dynamic. For example, a very loud EDM track or a very loud rock song. And what you want is to control peaks. Here and there, maybe you have some peak that poke out. Maybe it's the vocals, maybe it's the snare drum. And then you want a fast attack with a pretty medium-high ratio, but you want the compressor to activate only on those peaks, so most of the material is not compressed. Or the third approach, it could be you want to actually squeeze the mix quite a lot, and you want the compression to be obvious. You want the tone of the compressor that you pick, so you might apply a lot of gain reduction and a lot of makeup gain, so that the song pumps and breathes in time with the compression. And in that case, a 2-bus compressor becomes a big part of the sound of your mix, okay? So let's start with a few examples. So let's take a look at the more common type of compressors that you see used on the 2-bus. And those would be VCA compressor, Opto compressor, and Vari-Mu compressors. Let's start with the first one, which is the Ssl G Buss Compressor, probably the most used 2-bus compressor in history. You hear a lot of people referring to this compressor adding glue, and that is very hard to explain. Is a mixture of the tone of the compressor, the saturation that it adds, and also its action, okay? So the way it compresses is a VCA compressor. It can be aggressive. It can be a little more subtle. It depends on how you set it. And let's hear a mix without any 2-bus compression.
Evidence, I walked over to her just begging her please. I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, have a good time. She said, have a good time.
Okay, as you can see my settings, I'm compressing around 4 dB, and the compressor is working the whole time, pretty much, not only on peaks. And I did this using the approach of a lower ratio. As you can see, I set it at 2. This way, this compressor has a softer knee, is a little more gentle when it compresses, when it applies gain reduction. The attack, though, is set a little slower, is at 3, but it could be at 10 if you want more snap. Because since the compressor is working the whole time, I want some transients to pass, okay? And it brings things up front. Let's hear it with and without.
Evidence, I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, have a good time.
Okay, and this is just one approach. If I go for the other approach, let's say I want just to control peaks, I go for a 4 ratio. This way the knee becomes a little steeper, and I will lower the threshold so that the compressor is working only on the transients.
Evidence, I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby,
okay,
do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, have a good time.
Okay, so with this setting, what it does is it doesn't compress gently the whole material, but it just applies gain reduction on kick and snare pretty much, shortening the distance between those peaks and the rest of the song, making it a little more dense, okay? And the kick and the snare sit a little bit better in the mix.
Evidence, I walked over to her just to make her please.
Okay, let me show you another compressor, still a VCA, but the API 2500, which has, as we've seen in previous video, an inside sidechain detector, actually 3 presets, loud, medium, and norm. And changing this, you can change what the compressor is reacting to. So the API 2500 is another classic for 2-bus compression, different from the SSL that it has that glue. The API is more mid forward, is more gritty, is a little more punchy, and usually is more aggressive. So let's take a listen to this.
Evidence, I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, have a good time.
Okay, so the setting that I'm using are not subtle, because I want you to hear the difference and the differences between compressors and between the uncompressed and compressed mix. I'm using a very fast attack, so you hear the transients are limited pretty much. I'm using a feed-forward mode, which is more aggressive than the feedback old version. A high ratio, and the compressor is working pretty much only on the transients, okay? It's not compressing the whole material all the time. Focus on the internal sidechain is shift to the high frequency content when it's loud. In this way, on the contrary from the SSL compressor, is not only the kick drum that triggers the compressor, but pretty much snare and vocals and what's in the mid-high range. Okay, let's try play with the settings a bit.
Evidence, I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know
with a slower attack.
She said, have a good time. time I ever did see. I walked over to her just begging her please. I said, hey baby.
Okay, so everything it becomes very upfront. The API has this character that everything gets aggressive and in your face. I love this compressor, especially in feed-forward mode. Is very aggressive. And another thing to notice is that I left the channels unlinked because this is another important option that you have when you apply a 2-bus compressor. Applying the compression with stereo linked channels, you keep a very solid stereo image, a very solid center, and a phase coherence in general. When using a 2-bus compressor with the channels unlinked so that the compressor reacts independently to L and R, you get a wider stereo image, but you might lose some phase coherence, and your mid-channel, your center, it might get a little less solid. But it really depends on the mix and on the material. Sometimes it's a very subtle difference, sometimes it's very obvious. One interesting thing with this compressor is to switch from feed-forward new mode to old feedback mode. The compressor, it gets, in my opinion, a lot more musical, less aggressive. The gain reduction is less obvious, but this is because of the design. One interesting thing in feedback is the compressor doesn't look at the signal on the way in, it looks at the signal on the way out. So if you set a manual makeup gain and you turn the output knob up, you will see in feedback mode the compressor compresses a lot because, you know, he's taking the signal from the output. So if you turn the output up, it would be the same like lowering the threshold. Let's hear it. It's easier than explain it.
I walked over to her.
Take a look at the gain reduction meter.
I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said,
okay. Lower the release a bit.
Have a good time. She said, I'm gonna have a good time. I ever did see. I walked.
Okay, so yes, the overall volume is higher, but it's higher because the material gets denser. It gets more compressed. So in a way, the transients, the highest peaks are compressed more, so you have more headroom to push the overall volume. So with this one, we've seen two of the most famous and used 2-bus compressors, and they were both VCA. Now we're going to take a look at the next topology, and we're going to use the native instruments actually coded by SoftTube, the Vari-Comp, which is a non-official emulation of a very famous Vari-Mu compressor. And Vari-Mu is the other topology that you often see used on 2-bus compression. So what are the characteristics of it? Usually Vari-Mu compressors are very, very smooth, pretty much invisible action, gain reduction wise. And usually, since that they are tube compressors, you have quite a bit of a harmonics added, so color. One thing to say that you can, if you want, use more than one compressor on your 2-bus. And I did it several times, and a Vari-Mu with a VCA compressor is usually a pretty common combination. But for now, let's just use this one alone and hear how it handles the material.
I walked over to her, just begging her please. I said, hey baby, do you want to go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, have a good time.
Okay, so with these settings, with this fast attack and fast release, this compressor really soften the transients and really soften the overall tone and vibe of the mix. Not really what I would want for this kind of song, but let's play with the settings and let's see what we can come up with.
Evidence, I walked over to her, just begging her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, ooh, have a good time. She said, ooh, I'm gonna have a good time. Evidence, I walked over to her, just begging her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, ooh.
Okay, so in this case, this compressor, like I said, is not really the best choice because it softens the whole mix too much and it makes the bottom end a little mushy. But on different materials, Vari-Mu compressors are an excellent choice. Let's go to the next topology, which is Opto compression. And this one, the Summit Audio TLA 100A by Softube, is one of the best sounding plug-in compressors I've ever heard in my life. And please keep in mind that I'm not a fan of Opto compressors on the 2-bus, but this one is just amazing, and not just for 2-bus compression, but pretty much anything I have tried it on. Vocals, guitars, bass, piano, it's just great sounding. So it's very simple to use and set up. We have a 3-position attack, 3-position release, fast, medium, and slow, control for the meter that can show reduction and output, a gain, and a gain reduction, which is your threshold pretty much, a low-cut filter, not present in the original unit, very welcome in this plug-in version, and a saturation knob. You can run it clean or decide to add a very good sounding saturation, and a parallel control, so you can blend dry and compressed signal without the need of external routing. You can do it inside the plugin, and also a control for the external sidechain if you need it. So Opto compressor is our third choice, and usually Opto compressors are very musical. You see them used on vocals and bass and harmonically rich material. Usually you don't grab an Opto compressor for fast transient control. That's a job for VCA, but they can be fast enough for sure. But mostly what you want from an Opto is the tone and the very specific action, very specific way that they apply gain reduction. Especially the release is different from VCAs. That's one thing that makes them sound so different. Okay, so let's hear this one in the mix, and at the beginning I just want you to hear the tone, because this compressor actually changes the tone just running the material through it. It softens the material a little bit, but not as much as the Vari-Mu, and it doesn't blur things. It actually makes them warmer for once. I hate this word, but it does make the mix warmer overall. Let's hear the mix with no compression, just running the audio through it.
Evidence, I walked over to her, just begging her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go
Listen to the top end, how it becomes round and less digital. Okay, especially the vocals, it sits in the mix so nicely with this on. Let's play with the controls and apply some gain reduction with this.
Evidence, I walked over to her, just begging her please. I said, hey baby,
Kicks is triggering too much.
You won't know what she said. She said, time. She said, ooh, I'm gonna have a good time. Evidence didn't see. I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, ooh, have a good time. She said, ooh, I'm gonna have a good time. I ever did see. I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, ooh, have a good time. She said,
Okay, so this is definitely the king of warmth and is very, very nice sounding. As you can hear, it really brings things closer one to another in the mix, and it makes overall the mix bigger. This is, in my opinion, one of the best sounding plug-in compressor that you can possibly buy. Okay, so we've seen VCA, Vari-Mu, and Opto compressors on the 2-bus. There would be way too many possibilities for master bus compression to list them all. Multiband, running different compressor one after the other. It would be impossible to even try to show them all. So as usual, just experiment with your 2-bus compression and have a clear idea of what you want for your mix and pick a compressor accordingly. So as a final step, let's listen to the 4 compressors that we've used for this example, one after the other with no interruption. 3 different topologies, 4 different compressors to hear the differences on the same mix. And let's start with the Vari-Mu.
she was the finest thing that I ever did see. I walked over to her just to make her please. I said, hey baby, do you wanna go out with me? You won't know what she said. She said, ooh, have a good time. She said,
Okay, so these were just few examples among the endless possibilities that you have with 2-bus compression. Once again, you can use one compressor. You can automate controls of your compressor for different parts of the song if you want. You can use more than one combined, one after the other. You can use one compressor for a section and one compressor for another. It's dangerous, but you can do it. It's all a matter of having a clear idea of what you want your mix to go and what you want to get out from your 2-bus compression. So I hope this was informative. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.